It's time for Think, Change, Repeat. And now, the host of Think, Change, Repeat, Ashley.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Think, Change, Repeat. Today is May 21st, 2026. But I did put 2025 on my notes, so my apologies there. And I'm your host today, Ashley. And with me, I have my friend, Sean, the Wizard of Oz. Hello, Sean. How's it going?
Good evening, Ashley. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for joining me. We had a little scheduling mix up for my earlier time today at 8:30, and you very graciously agreed to join me. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be here. The scheduling was really my fault because I got two little kids. I had to get them in bed before I could join you here. So thank you for readjusting your schedule for me.
Of course, of course. And we do have a couple people in the chat. So I just want to say hello to everybody in the chat. Thank you for tuning in and joining us for the show. And this will be a fun introduction to my friend Sean. So, Sean, I just wanted to tell the people a little bit about you, a little bit about what we have been working on, what we have coming up. So, just to let everybody know, Sean and I are also starting a podcast, and it is called Fool Me Twice. So, we are still working on that. We've recorded our first episode, which is an intro episode, which may be, maybe kind of ancillary to today's conversation, because we're going to do some basic, we're going to see where the conversation takes us, but we'll cover a little bit of how we got there. So that is what that's what we got working on. But Sean, tell the people a little bit about you as far as your background in your regular life. Not too much info, but a little bit of the basics. And then we'll get into kind of where you're coming from with the other piece of this.
Sure. My name is Sean. I am a Pisces. I like romance novels and long walks on the beach.
That's beautiful.
Two of those are true. I won't tell you which two.
I know which two.
You do know which two. My name is Sean. I reside in New Jersey. I am a biochemist for one of the devilish big pharmas centered in New Jersey. I specifically work with biologics and do analytical testing for them. That is my day job. My after work hours jobs is very different topics and research and reading than analytical chemistry, but I kind of fell into this job. A lot of family connections got me into chemistry, and now I'm kind of just running with it. And with two little kids, big pharma has great benefits, unfortunately. So I don't like to say I'm working for the devil. I like to say I'm an infiltrator, and I'll give you all the exposés you could dream of when it comes to big pharma. Some of what I've learned, we'll put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I want to establish is sort of your bona fides, if you will, coming from a science background, and I know that we have had our conversations about big pharma and what that's like, but you do have that in your family as well from, kind of a lineage perspective. So, but I still think it's important from the scientific perspective. And then maybe as we go, I don't know, maybe not today, maybe we'll get into it at some point, but we've had these discussions as far as some of the processes of medication in general. I think that would be informative for people to know, what does that process actually look like? And you can certainly describe that and educate us. But also there's some other valuable questions that a lot of us have in this space. Some of them based on the legitimacy of what we're being told from the medical community. And I find that is a valuable discussion as well. So I think we'll avoid that one for today, but just know that that's something that we can talk about at a later time.
Absolutely.
So the other thing that I wanted to get into is, what is your background as far as we talk about this conspiracy world, the truther world, the ANCAP or libertarian space or whatever you want to say. Talk to us a little bit about what was that journey like for you? Because I think most of us know what it's like to grow up in a traditional paradigm where parents are one side or the other. Everybody believes in the two-party system, and you don't really subscribe to that. I don't really subscribe to that. So what got you to this point?
I was quite lucky that my parents were very open-minded, despite them, one being a pharmacist and the other a straight up chemist for a pharma company. Uh, I had early age ghost sightings, and they didn't shun me. They didn't encourage it either. It was more like, oh, well, that's interesting. There's books out there. There's information if you want to learn more. I had UFO sighting when I was like 10 years old, and they didn't push me away or send me to military school. It was more like, oh, very cool. What else do you want to learn about it? Here, take this thread and pull on it and see where it takes you. So that was nice to have open-minded parents. In the recent political paradigm, they've kind of closed down a little bit, but the boomers, I don't blame them. They're still my parents. I still love them. But let's see, where do I go from here? I did a ton of paranormal and UFO type research when I was young, like middle school age and high school age. And it really took off in college and started to like branch out into broader topics, more into the conspiracy realm. I was 15 or 16 when 9/11 happened, and I just bought the narrative like many other people, unfortunately. And when I was a freshman in college, the Loose Change guys were up at a festival in Vermont where I went to school, giving out free DVDs, and I bought one, and that just instantly like, wow, holy crap, I was not told the truth about this. There is way more to this event. And many of my friends didn't go to college. They went into the military because we got to get the evildoers. We got to get the bad guys over
Yeah.
there. And some of them didn't come home, and some of them were never the same. And they did some really dirty stuff that we can talk about another time. But none of them came back the same. Anyway, seeing Loose Change and questioning 9/11 really opened me up, and that just brought me on paths of, hey, I'm studying at college in the library every day. I train myself to go to the library every day and do work. There's a million books there. And that really opened me up, because it was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to just learn what I'm told in school. I can go figure this shit out on my own. And that brought me kind of to the path I am on today. This is answering your question, right? I'm not straying too much.
No, you're not straying at all, because you're kind of explaining the journey that you went on. So, first of all, I want to establish something that I find to be very interesting, which is that you had these paranormal experiences at a young age. And instead of your parents, I don't want to use the term gaslighting, but instead of them blowing you off or minimizing what you had been through or what you saw or thought you saw or whatever, they actually encouraged you to continue looking into that. And I think that that's a huge piece that a lot of people don't have, and maybe not even by the fault of their parents, but they just are not, maybe they don't believe that, or for whatever reason. I feel like your parents really handled that well, in my opinion, as far as encouraging you to continue learning and be interested. And I think at one point you said that your dad also had some old UFO books that he gave you, and that kind of, because of their encouragement, it caused you to continue checking into this and reading as much as you could about it.
Yeah, I picked up pretty early, especially getting like 60s and 70s UFO and conspiracy magazines from my father at a young age, that, oh, there's going to be stuff out there that I'm not told in school. There's going to be stuff that is out there that you have to find for yourself. Nobody else is going to tell you. And there were no podcasts back then. So we're not figuring it out, listening with headphones on, hiding in the basement,
Right.
or driving in the car. I had to go figure it out for myself. So I haven't had any UFO or ghost experiences since then, but it still led me on this path of being a little bit open to what's out there, and then using some discernment, because I fell for every gimmick growing up when you're young and naive. Oh, this is true. Oh, this is true. This must be true. Oh, this is different. That must be true. So it took decades to kind of narrow my field of vision, say, oh, now I see where the tomfoolery comes in, and where the charlatans are, and how much fuckery there is out there, especially in the alternative realm, because it's littered with it.
Yeah. I think that is a really good point. Now, there's something that you refer to whenever if something comes up and we're talking and it's kind of a hot topic in in the truther world, you have coined a term
Oh
to
no.
describe that. Do you want to tell them what it is? Do you remember what it
About
is?
conspiracy candy?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't coin that term, but
How dare you?
I will use it. And conspiracy candy is easy. It's almost like a form of propaganda, but for the alternative community, because they love to grasp onto whatever is different or new out there without thinking first. And I would even take this new government UFO files drop as conspiracy candy. This is like propaganda 101. It's like, oh yeah, cool. Oh, they're giving us the real information. Look at that. This is wonderful. That's just so easy to grasp onto. I think it's absolute poppycock, to be honest.
Yeah.
Same with many of the missing scientists, missing jet propulsion scientists. I think there's something there with a couple of them, but they purposely throw in others to get you looking in the wrong direction. And the point of conspiracy candy is, if you start asking the wrong questions, they don't give a shit what answer you come up with. And that is brilliant mass manipulation by the controllers.
Yeah, and I think that it is, it's two truths and a lie, and that is one of the things that we talk about all the time, that in war, the truth is the first casualty. So I am not presuming to know 100% that we are in an information war, but it sure feels that way. And I think one of the ways that, because people have the discussion surrounding the internet, that we were able to get so much more information and have these conversations that we wouldn't have otherwise had. And, you and I met in autonomy, and that's how we were able to connect, because all of those classes and interactions are online, they're on the internet, and that's how we are doing the show now. So there is that point to be made, but also it has opened us up for algorithmic manipulation and flooding the zone, or fifth generational warfare, or whatever you want to call it, with so much information that, first of all, even if it was all true, that would certainly make things easier. But there's still, you never could keep track. There's so much information, like even back in the day when, before the internet is what it is today, we were certainly getting a spin. I'm not saying that, but you could watch the 5 o'clock news or the 11 o'clock news, and you could just get highlights. Now, I'm not saying that what they're offering is good or anything like that, but I'm just saying that it was a lot more curated than it is now. So it's very difficult to keep track of everything that's coming and going. And then whenever you have these lies that are threaded throughout, it makes it so much more difficult, especially if you actually want the truth. It makes it really hard. And then the other thing is, I think there's a huge spectrum for people that are in the alternative media, or that are in the truth community, whatever that even looks like, because they've been able to bring in different parts of the sides, right? They were able to introduce the two-party paradigm to the conspiracy bell curve, basically, because we had the introduction of Q. So then there's a lot of people on in that subset of MAGA or whatever you want to call them that were then interested in conspiracy theories. And a lot of the Q stuff was really, it was really outlandish. Now, did they uncover and discuss true things? Maybe, but how do we know? Because there was so much nonsense associated with Q. You know, a 4D chess, we've heard that a million times. We're taking down the bad guys. We're arresting the PDF files. We're, you know, Tom Hanks and Rita were the first people who ended up having COVID during that time. And if you look really closely at the picture, you can see they're like in a jail cell in Australia, something like that. Like, what are we talking about? So there's so much of that out there. I don't know how we know. How are we supposed to keep track except for our discernment, except for not just believing things whole cloth when we hear them and trying to poke holes in that. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, but I just want to say I know I've been guilty of that myself. And then taking it too far. This is a discussion that we have all the time because I think everybody's controlled opposition. And there has to be some nuance in there. I mean, I think I'm right about that, but I think there has to be some nuance in there somewhere. Like probably some of the people that I think are controlled op maybe or not.
Probably. And the best controlled opposition is someone that does not know that they are controlled opposition. They're just being stage managed from the shadows, and they'll never know, and they'll never give you a hint because they got no idea.
That's a fair point. And I do think that, and this is something that we talked about with some of the bigger content creators, when you begin getting involved with huge management teams, it probably is actually really difficult. Like maybe some of them know and maybe some of them don't know. Maybe they're being used as a useful idiot. But either way, we can speculate about this all day long. The point is there's so much information that's difficult for us to try to figure out. And I like the use of the term conspiracy candy because I think it helps us start to identify those particular pieces in the puzzle that are maybe put there for them to watch information dissemination or to gauge reaction as this I don't know if this is the correct word, but like bellwether, a trial balloon, whatever you want to say, to gauge public reaction. Maybe that's some of that. I don't know. But one of the things that Sean and I want to get into on our show, Fool Me Twice, is mass manipulation. So some well-documented examples of propaganda, mass manipulation, manipulating the crowd, and things like that that are used to kind of get people into one camp or the other. Sean. Okay.
Yes.
So after you got into the UFO space, then you had questions about 9/11. And then you started reading a lot of, you kind of pivoted from purely looking into like UFOs and cryptozoology to some other deep diving type books. Talk to us about what else was an influence on you, because we talked about back in the day you used to watch C-SPAN a lot and you would watch alternative views TV, and talk about the influence of those type things, because that was still kind of before all the podcasting that we're exposed to now.
Right. In college, up late at night studying or walking home drunk from wherever, pop on or driving in the car late at night, probably when I shouldn't have been driving, Coast to Coast AM. They try not to, they're great. They try not to repeat topics night after night. So that really broadened me out a lot, and didn't buy all of it, but it was like, oh, holy smokes, another avenue of research. Oh, I didn't know about this. Great. There's people that have written about it or people that have spoken about it. I'll go check that out. Oh, Behold a Pale Horse is in my school library. I'll read that. That opened me up to some stuff. Just more that got me questioning my reality and questioning things. That was, those were huge influences on me. And as soon as I morphed my personal biography right after college, I started, my parents were really big into like the scientific conference scene. So I started looking for alternative research conference scenes, and I found some and went to my first like paranormal UFO conspiracy conference, and that opened up a lot because it was in Jersey City, and some of the people I met there were living in my town in New Jersey, and that was fantastic. Yeah, it opened me up to a lot. It brought me closer to people in person. So I saw ancient archaeology lectures at that conference, and cryptozoology, and of course UFO abduction crap, and
I'm not saying it's aliens.
energy weapons. Oh yeah, Georgia Zoukalos. Me and him were close friends for about a couple hours at that one conference when I was 22. Met him years after at another conference in Wisconsin or Minnesota, and he had gained popularity. Like, this is post. I met him before Ancient Aliens, and once I saw him after Ancient Aliens, he was too busy fighting off hordes of people, and he had a harem of women following him around. I was quite jealous, but it was incredible. It was amazing. Like, oh my God, TV destroyed you. Like,
did it destroy him, or did it give him Riz?
Yeah, that's true. I gave him Riz. Fucking the Greeks. Oh.
Okay, so you were doing all the things. Like, there was not a conference that you were interested in that you did not go to, right? Like, you're going to all the conferences.
Yeah,
okay.
I wanted to hear it all. Super soldier conferences back then. People splicing, allegedly, military whistleblowers whose DNA had been spliced with dolphins so they could do underwater maneuvers with the evildoers. Absolute brain dribble garbage poppycock. But I still went and listened. Like, this guy's full of shit, but I still wanted to be there and hear it and take it in and see who was there and see what else I could gather. There's always little bits of truth in there, but their broad picture is often a lot of filth. So I kept that up for years. There was not much podcasting at the time. There wasn't any. And this is like 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. Then I started to see podcasts and get involved in more of the radio scene and the podcast scene. Not personally, but listening to more and absorbing more and taking it in. And reading books like crazy and believing that 2012 was the end of the world because I was reading all these Mayan calendar books, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing stuff. The world didn't end. I don't know if you know this. It didn't end in 2012. The Mayans, they were not right. So we continue.
I'm not saying it's aliens, but I'm saying, what about CERN? What if we took a hard right into another dimension in 2012?
We took that left turn at Albuquerque. That's what you're saying. And now we're in La La Land.
I'm saying maybe because it's weird out in these streets. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay. So one of the things I think we can dig into at another point is all of these people that you did see speak at the conferences and what your thoughts were of them as far as like who was telling the truth, who was a true believer, who was a grifter, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot there. Let's talk about Alternative Views TV, because that was something that you introduced me to, and there's a lot of valuable information, and they covered a lot of things that would be, I think they were maybe slightly left-leaning in some of the conversations that I've listened to, which is what Interesting Books Reviewed says as well. Like, a lot of the people that were digging into these subjects were very left-leaning, or one of the things that we want to have on our show is called the Smut Chronicles, and it's covering from like Hustler or whatever that has, we're reading it for the articles, and they have.
I continue to tell my wife that I'm reading this for the articles. It's just the articles.
It's the articles only. But in all seriousness, if you go back and look at some of that stuff, and yes, when I did that, I avoided as much of the gross stuff that they had in there as possible, but they actually had articles talking about covert operations. And part of that, Larry Flint was trying to expose a lot of the corruption. Now, my understanding is that was done in order to expose the Reagan administration. So it was kind of this left-leaning bent, but they were still talking about a lot of these really important topics. And then, as we saw definitely during 2020, things got really weird. A lot of people that were on the left were not really speaking out in that anti-authoritarian way as they were. But there's still a lot of really interesting information there. So talk to us about Alternative Views TV, how you ended up finding that and kind of what you utilized that for, because I think it was maybe finding other books, authors, all that good stuff.
Shoot, and now I'm drawing a blank. How did I hear about Alternative Views? Do you remember? Because we have talked about this in the past. It was there's a YouTube channel called Memory Hole. It was called The Memory Hole. It's since been canceled and removed and never returned.
It's been memory hold.
It's been memory hold. Well done. Well done. How meta of you. Memory hole has been memory hold, but they would play clips that were right up my alley. It's like the secret history and the secret present, the things you're not taught in school, you're not taught on a regular basis. And some of their clips were the C-SPAN book club, which still runs on weekends, and they bring in authors and they talk for 20, 30 minutes on their books. And some of those were absolute gems. I think I've bought 100 from going to C-SPAN and seeing what they've presented. And they would host, nobody watches C-SPAN, but like 80-year-olds and me, because I wanted to see the damn nerds. Books. The hugest nerds. I wanted to see what the hell they were showing. Anyway, bought a bunch of books from them. Moving away from C-SPAN at the moment, Memory Hole would show clips from Alternative Views, and that brought me onto Alternative Views. And that was it was like the Alex Jones. You know what it is. I don't need to repeat this. I took it as the Alex Jones before Alex Jones. It was late 70s through the 80s, public access TV, Texas, a bunch of seemed like former hippies that were like, we're going to expose the CIA. We're going to expose the drug trade. We're going to expose the trafficking. We're getting to the nitty gritty. JFK was killed by the CIA, and we're doing a tell-all. And it blew my mind. This is only a few years ago, but it was fantastic until it was memory hold.
Right. And there is still, you can get that stuff on archive.org, because we've had these conversations where you send us some links about that. And then they do have a handful on an Alternative Views TV page that has some of the interviews. And that's where the author William Gibson, or James William Gibson, who wrote A Perfect War, Techno War in Vietnam, he had at least it's posted in 2 separate parts, but they were interviewing him about his book, which was a really amazing conversation. So it was exposing all this stuff. And I know what you mean by Alex Jones before Alex Jones, but I would say without the hyperbole, without the added like conspiracy candy, it was not presented in a way that was bombastic. Like, it was presented as a conversation with an author and what they were trying to expose, and it didn't seem too out there from what I have seen. So yeah, and as you said, trafficking, that's one of the things that we are going to try to talk about on our show as well, is a lot of the books and characters that are connected. And definitely there's a lot of conversations, or have been in our space, about the Epstein files, about Epstein himself. We're talking about it since at least 2019. I know a lot of people were talking about it before then, but just the fact that, like, it's just a tip of the iceberg. It is an absolute, like, it's a little ice cube in an ocean of these networks. And it's not that there's some very clear picture about how everybody connects, but I do think it's there. And there are people that are doing the work to connect some of these people in through their associations with other people in these networks. So there's so much to dig into. We did have a question, well, 2 things. So Little Johnny Boy, LJ, Little John, my fellow North Carolinian, said, "Tell the wizard that I worked on the 88th floor of the World Trade Center, and I say a plane could not go through."
I won't disagree with you. I
Yeah.
won't disagree with you at all. I don't
And
know. I don't think we know what happened, and I don't claim to know what happened. It's just not the official story, and that was the a young early game changer for me, as it is with a lot of people. You know,
yeah, it's the gateway drug. Okay. And then we also had a question from Mr. Helm, and he said, "Did you ever meet Jeremy Corbell at any of those conferences?"
oh, the yoga instructor.
Is that the yoga instructor,
Yeah,
Dustin?
no, Corbell was a yoga instructor, and he's latched on to Coast and made several documentaries. Some of them are pretty good. I never met him personally. I think he's made documentaries in a certain way that's made the rulers, the movers and shakers, the controlling elite kind of say, "Oh yeah, we can make sure this gives traction," because he's portraying it in a certain way. This is just my opinion. Don't hate me. I'm not calling him a phony or charlatan, but he wouldn't be my favorite UFO researcher. We'll just say that. It's just my opinion.
Sure. Yep. And that's fine. That is totally fine. This is a trust tree. It's the trust nest. So
The circle of
we
trust.
can
Got it.
yes, you're in the circle of
Thank you.
trust, so we can say these things.
Good.
So who is your favorite UFO researcher?
Oh, put me on the spot like that. Damn.
Well, you invited that. That's on you.
Oh, my favorite like classic UFO researcher.
Yeah, or who do you feel is like genuine, legitimate, like, you know?
John Keel.
John Keel. Okay. So if anybody in the chat knows who that is and you're in with that guy, let us know. But I'm not familiar. I'm
He's
not.
not around anymore. This is who the Mothman Prophecies movie is based off of. He was an early
Oh,
researcher in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even around in the 80s. He even went to some of my meetings. Well, we'll get to that soon, but he did write a lot about the trickster element, and he was the first to write about Men in Black. And I thought his writing was really good. And I know he was doing his best to stay grounded, because I interacted with a lot of people that were close to him. So he was being tormented by whatever is out there. And it may just be government, or it may be that trickster phenomena, but something did not like him barking up its tree. And I believe it's him that, you've heard me say it many times, that once you start looking deep into some of those really dark alternative topics, it starts to look back at you and you go effing crazy. And
yeah.
you have to be very, very, very careful of that. And I learned that from reading his books, which we will absolutely cover on our show.
Yeah,
Fool
for
me
sure.
twice.
Yeah. Fool me
Shameless
twice.
plug.
So I do think that's interesting. And I guess that's based on Nietzsche, right? If you stare into the abyss stares back.
Right.
But I think I subscribe to that has happened to a lot of people. And in Interesting Books Reviewed, one of my favorite YouTube channels, he talks about that a lot. There's a lot of authors who were trying to expose X, Y, and Z, and their lives were ruined based on that. For whatever reason, there's a lot of people like that. I mean, obviously we know some of the highlights, like we know about Gary Webb, but these are people that until you're digging into this stuff, you don't even really know that much about them. And there was, who's he talking? One of the things he talks about a lot is the cattle mutilation phenomenon. And again, this is not one of my areas of like deep diving. I assume you have, and we can talk about that if you have. But he said that a lot of people, if they are writing about cattle mutilation from the UFO perspective, then they're totally fine. If they start bringing in the MyLabs and military experiments and like potential for testing of biological weapons and things like that, that is when it gets ugly for them. And he even had an author, I can't remember the name right now, who he was discussing his work. And this author was like, if you were smart, you would leave this alone. And he just said, I'm not that smart. I can't help it. I just got to keep doing what I'm doing. But that's kind of scary.
I agree. I agree. Very scary. Cattle mutilations. Funny you should bring that up. I was researching. I'm kidding. I've never really researched it on my own, other than reading books and documentaries. And one of the books I'm reading currently is on a chapter about the tomfoolery in the cattle mutilation phenomena. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. My apologies.
Oh yeah, no need to apologize there. I think it's interesting, and that's why I wanted to have a free form conversation. So
Okay.
if we go down a rabbit hole, then we do, and that's where we were supposed to go. Maybe.
Cool.
Yeah, because I was actually curious. That's not something that we've ever talked about, but I was
Yeah.
curious if you did go down that rabbit hole, and if you had read works both from the UFO perspective and from the government experiment perspective.
Sorry, I was reading something. You're asking if I've ever looked into it?
Yes.
The cattle mutilation phenomena.
Yes.
Thank you for the slow, emotive yes.
You're welcome.
I have, and there's a great book called Stalking the Herd. I will highly recommend it. I had the author, speak at one of my conferences that we'll get to eventually. But that is a great book. Linda Moulton Howe in 1980 with her, maybe her documentary is called Stalking the Herd. Now I'm getting it mixed up, but Linda Moulton Howe original documentary kind of exposing some of this with farmers whose cattle were showing up exsanguinated or mutilated and no traces around. She kind of opened it up, and I think it's fantastic work. Her later work, maybe not be the greatest. She tends to, I think she went down the wrong path, unfortunately. Linda Moulton Howe, friend of the show. But her early work on cattle mutilation is what brought it to the open. And she was already kind of a conspiracy journalist on her own. So in Denver, Colorado. So I'll give her the kudos for opening up that to the world. Do I personally think aliens from another planet are coming here to mutilate cattle? Not a chance. Not at all. I think it's all experiment by our own government or pharmaceutical companies or black ops. But it could also be used as cover for something else, which is kind of what I'm reading about right now in Saucers, Spooks, and Kooks. But it would be a brilliant cover because it eventually became conspiracy candy. And now that's the zeitgeist. Everyone, oh, cattle mutilations, that's aliens. Yeah, UFOs are coming here. This is just personal opinion. I don't think anything flesh and blood is coming here currently. I just don't see it. Interdimensionally, maybe there's something else there, but flesh and blood, just personally, I have an issue with them physically getting here. We can go deeper into my beliefs on that another time, but there's your teaser.
Okay, I like that. And I do think it's good to point out, like, this is the way that even if somebody is trying to do good, honest work, this is the way that something can co-opt that narrative and turn it into something else. And then through something that we talk about all the time, whether that's propaganda or neuro-linguistic programming, whatever that is, then you have the association with that thing, the wrong thing, right? UFOs, cattle mutilation. It just happens and we're not even necessarily aware of it. Like if somebody said like Trump to you, then you'd be like orange man, bad, beautiful, big, beautiful bill, like whatever. Like there's a handful of these words that we automatically associate. And I think that they can do that with, some of these other topics, cattle mutilation, UFOs automatically. So I think it's very interesting that you're talking about these people in a nuanced way, because I think that's what we need to do is when we're looking into these subjects, we can, even if you listen to somebody that you don't agree with, you can hear what they're saying. And like you're discussing, trying to hone in your discernment of if this person's a grifter or a charlatan or whatever. And then you also can realize the nuance of a topic, because like you may have several different people who are writing about that, like cattle mutilation, for example. And then you have people coming from the UFO side and some people coming from the experimental or military experiments or whatever that is. And then a lot of times the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, not the UFO part. I don't believe that either, but in the middle of the other stuff that people are reporting on. So it's not easy when you feel like you are being lied to all the time, to try to find what you think is honestly the truth, or somewhere in the middle, or a close proximity to the truth. Like there's so much out there that we're just not going to know. And this is part of our conversations as well, of me asking you questions that are like impossible questions, because I want to understand what is happening. What is the actual big picture? Who are the big players? Why are they doing this? But I think that we have to be happy with trying to figure it out as best as we can, and realize, and just being comfortable with saying, I don't know. This is the best that I can think on that, but I don't know. So let's talk about Fringe, New Jersey, because you've already started bragging about your conferences. So why don't you tell us about that?
Oh yeah. Oh, your segues are incredible.
Thank you. That's what I've been told.
My early 20s, not the early 20s, my early 20s, when I was trying to attend every conference possible, I discovered there were monthly meetings in the auditorium in the library of my town from the New Jersey Paranormal UFO Congress. And I was like, oh shit, great, I'm going to start going. So I started attending their monthly meetings, and they were also hosting big conferences once a year, I think it was back then. And they would bring in authors on these various conspiracy topics, and they would present their stuff for a weekend, and it was a blast. And I got really close to these people, close enough that few years later, when I was in my late 20s, the guy that had been running this group since the mid 80s was getting up there in years and wanted to take a back seat. So I jumped forward and said, sure, I'll take over. I'm not going to call it the UFO Paranormal Congress. I'll call it Fringe New Jersey. It's things on the fringe. We're expanding topics. And it went very well for several years. I hosted monthly meetings, did presentations constantly, brought in authors and researchers galore for these conferences that I would host at a hotel in New Jersey. And it was a blast, and it went on for several years. Met so many people. Often it's stuff I'm interested in, but some of it was just I'm catering to the crowd. And this is a lot of like the older crowd that shows up to these meetings, monthly meetings in the library auditorium. Like teenagers aren't going there. It ain't cool, man. So it's a lot of baby boomers and above. But I learned meetings and conferences. Sometimes there was 250 people there. Like it was out of control. And sometimes there's only 50 people there or 30 people there. But I learned a lot from these people because they were showing up in person. They could have said, screw this, I'm going to be anonymous and stay online and learn about this crazy conspiracy topic, but they were willing to push the ridicule aside, because we were made fun of all the time. I mean, in the library and at these hotels, people would be like, you fucking kooks, what are you doing here? It happened all the time. It happened with, no, I guess not much of my friends, with some of my acquaintances that were like, stay away from me now, man. What are you getting yourself involved in? But this older crowd didn't give a shit what people thought, and I admired that. So I tried to take that with me and wear my heart on my sleeve, and it's kind of what brings me here and able to talk about this stuff, because I admired that older crowd that was kind of hoisting me up, be like, oh yeah, we want a leader that's in their late 20s, early 30s to kind of boost up the energy for us and bring in some fresh information. We can't keep talking about Roswell for 15 years straight. So
Right.
it was a point of admiration for me.
I'm glad that you brought that up because first of all, I think that that is something that, I mean, it's something that I've talked about quite a bit, but of the lack of respect for what older generations know and have experienced and what their thoughts are, I think it's important if you can interact with those people, whether it's in the fringe space or whatever you want to say, to learn from them. That's very important. Like you're just saying, you learned a lot from them. Even if you didn't agree with everything or you weren't interested in necessarily the same topics and you were catering to them in some way. So when you said that you did sometimes cater to this particular demographic, which is quite specific, honestly, this is people that are interested in fringe subjects and they're mostly older. What were you catering to them with? Like, what was their main interest besides Roswell?
Oh man, a lot of JFK research. A lot of them were alive when JFK was killed, and it was a pivotal point in their life. It was their 9/11, and they picked up on the conspiracy behind it right away. So even 40, 50 years later, they're still interested in it because we still haven't gotten to the bottom of it. Um,
And
so
really quick, Sean, sorry,
yeah,
I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to say shout out to Don Jeffries because he was young when JFK was murdered, and that was, you know, he spent it like his whole life since then researching this very subject, and it's something that he's still very much interested in, and it's super valuable what these people know, what they have actually looked into and researched and found and worked together at conferences and podcasts and the writing that they've done. So shout out to Don. Go ahead, sorry.
yeah, absolutely, no problem. Shout out Don. Um, a lot of them still wanted to hear new exciting topics, but they still wanted like the classic alien abduction story. So I would have to bring in people looking at that. But I would squeeze in things that I liked. There's a researcher that's looked into spontaneous human combustion for 20 years and wrote a book about it. And he spoke twice for me at conferences, and it's awesome material. We'll go into it in the future. Even though it sounds wacky and something that's absolute BS, there may be more to it. And I think it's just a giant question mark for me, which I love. I don't know the answer. Fantastic. I love it. I want to learn more. I would bring in psychedelics researchers, ayahuasca shamans that would come to the conference. I had, and I would even throw in some, not mainstream, but you'll see what I mean. New Jersey, the Jersey Devil. Everyone's heard of the Jersey Devil. You're a Sopranos fan. You know about the Jersey Devil. Hey. So in the Pine Barrens.
I thought that was Chris Christie.
Yeah, he is. Well played. Well played. The big Jersey Devil. Anyway, I brought in a university researcher that writes about Benjamin Franklin and his involvement with the Jersey Devil. And back in that time, New Jersey was South Jersey and North Jersey, and they had competing almanacs. Ain't no newspapers back then. They had what they called almanacs that were released, and the two were fighting for viewership, North and South Jersey. So I don't remember which one, but one started making up stories about the other to make them look kooky. Here we are 250 years later with the story of the Jersey Devil that started between that feud between the two almanacs making fun of each other.
That is very interesting. And you said that you just referenced one of my favorite shows, The Sopranos. Mm-hmm. And you're saying that that is the Jersey Devil is intimated in the Pine Barrens episode?
No, but you should be able to know if I say Pine Barrens and Sopranos that the Jersey Devil is linked to that. It was a bad word association. Forget it.
Okay, because I was like, well, there is something spooky about that episode. You know, there's humor woven into the Pine Barrens episode, but there's also like a spooky, almost like Fargo-like vibe to to that particular episode when they were running North Jersey.
Absolutely.
Okay, so as far as Fringe, talk to us about some of your favorites that were, your favorite speakers. Were they well received? What did they present on? That kind of thing.
Oh man, you're making me pick favorites.
You got to have a couple.
What drew the crowd in? The ayahuasca shaman was really fascinating because he brought some of the instrumentation that he was using in the Peruvian jungle, and people loved it for the music as well as the like group meditation as well as the presentation he gave. That was really great. Favorites. Shoot, there was a woman that passed away from Connecticut, and she wrote such great stuff on paranormal experiences. And now I'm forgetting her name, and I'm going to hell for it. But she was a great researcher, and she died shortly after I ended my conferences. What the hell's her name? It'll come to me in like 25 minutes. But
It'll come
anyway,
to you.
it'll come to me.
You can talk about her research.
She had great, wonderful presentations. She did it one or two times, and she had so many books for sale. She brought a big crowd with her, which was a big boost for me. Always a big help. Someone talking about crystal healing and orgone energy brought in a big crowd. That's great. I really enjoyed it. The woman that I mentioned, whose now name I can't freaking remember, from Connecticut, after one of my conferences, she put out a series of articles on her website, and they were very strange. They were like, they were almost like, it was almost like, oh shit, did she find the real truth behind this? So this is different than her previous writing. And then she kind of died mysteriously and suddenly. And it was like, I don't know if the trickster phenomena got to her because she was looking into this stuff for so many years, or if she was trying to expose the last of something and her body knew she was dying. I don't know, but I remember that sticking out to us a lot. We did a big panel discussion on American Cosmic. Do you remember that book?
No.
Isaac Weishaupt has talked about it a lot. That's Diana Pasulka's book that came out a couple years ago. This is the technocrats' attempt at redirecting the UFO narrative. So
okay,
we can go into that.
Say the title again.
American Cosmic. Diana Pasulka. So long and short of it, I think there's some heavy manipulation in this book, if you get my drift. Like it's a narrative grasp by the technocrats, in my opinion. And really that was the result of everyone on the panel's discussion was kind of focused the same way, because she was a foreign religions researcher, I think in North Carolina, who was contacted. Oh, she was contacted. Of course she was, randomly, to look into a couple of these rich billionaire, rocket inventor, technocrat wackos, and their cult that they were making out of their belief in extraterrestrials and their contact with them. So that's why I give it the description of it's the technocrats' attempt of redirecting the narrative in their favor. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And so she presented at your conference?
No, we did a panel discussion about her book right after it came out, because it was so wildly popular that we were like, we need to nip this in the butt. There's an agenda behind this book, and we're gonna expose it to our friends that show up to these things.
Yeah. So was that well received, this sort of approach of kind of debunking, or at least, because that was kind of the early days to even know about the technocrats, I mean, the technocrats and the global agenda was really not on my radar for a long time. I mean, I came to this from a different way than you, because mine was really from from libertarian philosophy, or from voluntarism, that kind of, I started there. So originally my focus was being, anti-authoritarian and anti-government. And so the globalist piece came later for me. So I feel like that's a little bit early, but was it well received by the people that were on the panel and the people in the crowd? Like, oh yes, we recognize that there are elements of the technocratic agenda here. We can see this clearly.
I believe so. I'm sure there were some that were like, no, 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 this isn't true. This billionaire really is contacting aliens. But the majority were right on board with us. Like, yeah, we've seen this playbook before. This is just another group of people trying to grasp this narrative. It's odd that this woman was chosen for it. And I think there's a reason that she was. It didn't happen by random chance. So, overall, I think it went really well. And it was some noted authors that were on the panel, myself and a couple other random people from the group that I was like, you're very learned. You've read a lot. I want to hear your opinion on this. So we just raced through the book and did a panel, and I think it was well worth it. Okay. Maybe people hated it. I don't know.
You probably would have known. You probably would have known. So let me ask you this before.
This wasn't that long ago. Like this was like 2018, 2019. I think it was 2018 that came out. So it wasn't super long time ago. That's like no one had heard of the term technocrat before. It was used regularly by these kooks that were my best friends.
Yeah.
I was one of them.
For sure. You still are.
Oh,
so
so kind.
I know, people tell me that. So as far as I do want to get into kind of what caused the end of Fringe New Jersey, but before we get to that, in regards to the psychedelics conversation, talk to us a little bit about that, and talk to us about, because this is something that you and I have talked about in our personal conversations. First of all, some of the experiences that people have had on psychedelics are horrifying, and we can talk about that. But also, we've talked about, what are you opening yourself up to? The potential for literal, like, a spiritual darkness or demonic presence, or whatever that may be. I mean, that's something that I wonder about and I'm curious about in regards to the use of psychedelics, even while we see that narrative being pushed. Oh, psychedelics is healing. This is going to heal your trauma. Your trauma is not, because there literally is a documentary on Netflix that's dealing with, I think it's Navy SEALs, but basically they're traumatized, and because they've seen war, and the spin is that it's from childhood. And they were able to heal that with psychedelics. So I know this is a huge conversation, and we can probably do an entire series about that. But just a little blip, how were these conversations surrounding psychedelic healing received by that crowd? And were they open for the other conversations about what are you really dealing with?
I'll speak for the people that were attending these as well as myself. We kind of treated it like it was a spectrum where there's psychedelic healing is real. There is some potential healing there, but there's a fine line between using something for exploration, or for healing, or for attachment. And I think that the veil between our world, whatever the hell else is out there that you bridge when you're under hallucinogens or psychedelics, you're making yourself very vulnerable to what could be out there, to attachment, to the trickster, to the other that's out there. And I have no doubt that they're sitting up there waiting for something to breach their world that they could attach to. And the crowd mainly took it like that. But I didn't focus on any of the bad stories. It was more like researchers looking into salvia and the mystery behind it, or the researchers looking into the biochemistry of psilocybin and salvia divinorum or LSD 25, whatever it was. It was more of, I tried to keep it more along the positive realm, but we would discuss openly like this is dangerous shit. Just like my meetings is very granola. You've heard me use this term. It's fruits, nuts, and flakes. They're weird people. These topics draw in weird people. I'm one of them. I know it. You know me as a weird person.
Very.
And people take advantage of this. And there are many research facilities that are, or healing facilities, even in New York City, that have been shut down or had temporary closures. This is psychedelic healing. This is like MDMA research facilities where they're trying to learn how to heal people, where people have been graped because the researchers take advantage of the people. So you're always going to have that I'll say penetration, that infiltration by the other, or the infiltration by the people around you when you're under the influence of these things. So it's not to be taken lightly. It's a delicate subject. Is there more to learn? Absolutely. And that's why I would bring psychedelic researchers in, because I think there is something there. And if it opens someone up, fantastic. It opened me up taking it in high school and college. I don't want to do it again. I don't need it, but I'm one of the lucky ones. Some people are not so lucky and they are never the same from it. So it's a fine line between healing, exploration, and attachment by something else. Did that kind of answer it?
Yeah, it did. And I think that you're allowing for nuance. I mean, once again, you're not saying like, I know the answer. You're saying that, yes, that was something that we had touched upon. And you also said something else that's important, which is, I think a lot of people that feel like something is not right, or that they don't have the whole story, or that there's more to the story, or however you want to phrase that, people that are searching, there is a vulnerability to that. And it does at times, depending on where you're at on that spectrum, it makes you vulnerable for people potentially trying to take advantage of you. And I think that's why people that are charlatans and grifters in this space, that's why they're able to be successful, because they can identify the need or the desire of people who are searching and pretend to address that. So I do think that that's an important point. And I think that a lot of us, because we're looking for the truth, that we could be vulnerable to that as well. So something to be on the lookout for. One thing I wanted to say, Garth Goldsmith he was in the Nights chat. He said the creator of The Sopranos, David Chase, we've talked about this. He was a key writer on Kolchak, the Night Stalker. So
interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Maybe we'll have to cover that at some point. And I always wanted to cover the occult, the esoteric that was in The Sopranos. I mean, Sean and I have talked about that quite a bit, because there's a good amount of that there in that. That's a side tangent, and maybe we can get to that later. But there's technically it's 6 seasons of The Sopranos, but really it's 7 seasons. So for you to do that, that's quite an undertaking. That's a lot of, because you have your initial watch through, which I've already done, but then you need to do rewatching, right? So this is going to turn into a Twin Peaks situation from like what Isaac has. Okay, so I wanted to say that. Now, the other thing that I wanted to say, I want us to talk about some of the experiences that we talked about that people had from psychedelics, like spending your entire life as a blanket or something.
That's what you want to talk about?
I do, because that is insane to me. That it makes me feel bad to throw away a blanket or like a lamp, because I'm like, what if
dare you?
What if this is somebody that's tripping in another world, and then they're sitting here as the lamp in my living room, and they never get used, and now they're getting thrown in the garbage?
Okay, so for the For the viewer at home that has no idea what this kook Ashley is talking about, she's talking about salvia trips, not necessarily mushrooms or acid or ecstasy. She's talking about some salvia stories we've discussed where salvia is a bit more of a dissociative, and people under the heavy influence of salvia have claim that they have lived lifetimes as a blanket that was shoved into a closet or a ceiling fan. And they can recall every time families moved in the house, moved out of the house, had children, watched them grow up, when they were turned on, when they were turned off, when they were repaired. And they could remember it with extreme vivid detail. And then they're just shot back into this world and they have to pick up where they left off. Or people that are a floorboard in the kitchen, or people that lived another life and had other children and were brought back to here, and they're never the same because they miss the children that they had in this other world. I've never done salvia. I've done a lot of drugs, but I've never done salvia. I saw what it did to some friends of mine freshman year of college, and one of them we permanently called Jesus because he changed his appearance to look like Jesus immediately after, and it was a big joke. But anyway.
Did he have a religious experience? Is that why he did that?
No, he just went from normal in the triple next to me, and they were like, we can't be around you anymore, man. You stopped showering. And so they kind of kicked him out, and he just lived in people's hallways for a year without shaving and without wearing shoes. This wasn't anything too abnormal in Vermont where I went to college. Like, it's a lot of fish heads and hippie culture up there. So it wasn't that weird, but it was like, oh, Brian turned into Jesus. He did salvia. Now he's Jesus.
Yeah,
he was not
familiar.
of the Jesus religion, if that's what you're asking. He was not a Christian, but so it made it more ironic to call him Jesus afterwards.
Yeah, so I went to a school that was very similar. I went to school in the mountains of North Carolina. So it was same, 50% hippies, dreadlocks, fish heads. So I get it. Anyway, okay. So all that to say, that is an insane experience, I think, to have had. And how do you come back to normal world and function? And I think somebody even talked about that on a Joe Rogan episode, that they knew a friend that had done something, maybe it was salvia, and they ended up having an entire other life, an entire family, like what you're describing. And then he came back and he had to have therapy because it was devastating, So anyway, that was definitely a side tangent rabbit hole. But the point is, in your Fringe New Jersey experience, you covered a ton of different subjects. And I want to come back to that, but I wanted to go ahead.
You wanted to ask what happened to us. What was our ultimate fate? Is that what you're getting at?
I'm getting at that. But
okay, sorry.
Before I did that, Levi Narrow Gate posted in the chat. He said, you go looking for Satan, Satan will find you. If you start going down his rabbit holes, you will be sucked down deeper and deeper and will be consumed with the evil. Now, I want to come back to that because I think that is something that I've been pondering about in regards to our conversations about trafficking and the exploitation of children and things like that. I want to come back to that. But talk to us about what happened with Fringe New Jersey. Why did that end up closing down? All that.
We were kicked out of it was a lot of work for me. And at like 32 years old at the time, at times it was getting overwhelming. But that's really a poor excuse. I was willing to keep it going, but we were kicked out of the library that we had been using since the mid 80s with that group. And the best I can gather is that it was because the last group meeting we did, I had someone give a presentation on Planned Parenthood, and specifically on one of the Planned Parenthoods in New Jersey, as well as several others that were under investigation at the time for the selling of fetal tissue. And the library did not like that. We could talk about aliens taking out fetal tissue ad nauseum, and they didn't give a shit. But as soon as we say Planned Parenthood is doing the same thing, but they're profiting off of it, all of a sudden it's, sorry, Sean, we can't host your meetings here anymore. So we had to find somewhere else to go. And then we found somewhere else to go. And then COVID started. And then we were just stuck to the internet. And as I said before, it was a lot of older crowd. And it was very difficult to get them on Zoom calls. And I did it for a year of just Zoom when we couldn't meet in public because of the virus that doesn't exist. And I eventually called it quits. I couldn't get the engagement. It was just too much for me. And we had been, a couple of the meetings, we had been like hacked, where people would sneak into the Zoom meeting and just play porn the whole time, and then no one would come back. It was like, oh, it's not me. I'm not doing that. I'm not showing the anal because somebody else.
That happened. Well, it was early days of Zoom. And this was when Zoom was being widely adopted and utilized, and a lot of people had that happen. School kids figured out how to hack it. They figured out how to make it look like they were sitting there all day, put themselves on a loop. Other people crashed Zoom meetings and did that same thing when everybody was on Zoom. So it's just how it ended up happening. But it is sad, because the experiences that you had and the speakers and the conversations in real life, that stuff's kind of rare. So I hate that it happened. And I know now, like, it's different because you have a family and it would be way more difficult. But do you keep in touch with any of those people?
Yeah, I do still keep in touch with many of them. I send them pictures of my kids. Some have since passed on, unfortunately. Many I've never seen again, and that's just part of being in the alternative. I think sometimes people just go their own way and they're gone. And there were friends I had in there that got really, really, really into Q, and then realized they'd been duped, and I never heard from them again. And it happened with several. So I don't blame anybody. None of us have all the answers. Sure, I hosted conferences and I brought in people from across the country to speak to a crowd of 200 people, but I still don't have all the answers. I don't know. I've just seen a lot, but I don't have all the answers. That's why we talk about all the time, because I'm trying to pick your brain, because I'm trying to learn more, and you're reading stuff that I want to learn more about.
Yeah. Well, definitely our conversations have been really good for me as far as being able to flesh a lot of this stuff out and being exposed to different subjects. And then oftentimes we find threads that are weaving these topics together because, when we've talked about the cryptocracy, it's often present. And that includes universities and corporations and the military and intelligence and the different roles that they're playing in a lot of the subjects that we're looking into. So it's fun to try to find the threads and find these, connections where they exist and talk about maybe this is true, maybe this isn't true, or maybe this person is not controlled opposition, Ashley, things like that. So the thing that I wanted to come back to is Levi's comment and what you said with the researcher that was talking about, if you look into the abyss or if you look into the darkness or whatever that is, it starts to look back to you. So one of the things that we've talked quite a bit about, and we follow Patrick, the Deliberate Stranger, his channel, who continued in the work of Dave McGowan, and Patrick doesn't present information that he just thinks is the answer. What he's really good about is finding old or lost pieces of information or documentaries or interviews, and he just shares it. It's just related for your consideration on the topic of these people or when cases that appear to have some of the same threads as the work that McGowan did in PTK. And one of those topics often that comes up is not only the abuse and torture of people, but also children. And that's a really dark subject. And this is something that I've been thinking quite a bit about lately, because I feel like a case could be made for you to, okay, you're aware of it and then move on with your life. But I also feel like, what I'm trying to say is I feel conflicted sometimes about engaging in this content. And this is something that we talked about recently in regards to one of the documentaries that you learned about from Patrick or his channel. And it's like, what, and I'm not expecting you to have the answer. I'm just wanting your opinion on that. But like, what is our responsibility as far as people that are interested in learning about what has happened? Mark Dutroux, the Dutroux affair, the Epstein, the Mark David Norman, John Wayne Gacy, like all of these people, to learn about them, to learn what they did, and to understand, or the Finders, Franklin scandal, whatever, with the exploitation of children. What are your thoughts on that? Like, what is that? What is the line? What's the guideline for how much you should learn, or how much you should engage with this content as far as researching it, versus like, when is it time to walk away from that? What do you think?
Man, I take breaks. That's the best evidence, or the best advice I could give is take breaks. It's almost like the true crime wine moms that are just so engulfed in true crime, it kind of becomes part of them. And I think it sadly eats away at them, kind of. And same as when we've talked about these like child exploitation, child porn, child abuse documentaries. We talked about one recently and you were like, I just can't, I need a break. I can't go into that because I don't want that to become a part of me. Uh, and I totally understand. My wife is really into ghost hunting shows. And there's been several that she's like, I just got a bad feeling. I'm not going to bother watching this one. I can't take the risk of inviting something in. And when you're looking at the dark topics, and it could be child exploitation, you're still looking into something demonic, and you could be inviting it in just by offering it your attention. So it's not for everybody, and some people can handle it great, but some people can't handle it for very long. So yeah, those are my thoughts on it. That it would be a piece of advice. Don't fall head over heels into the really dark topics. It's not for everybody. Please take breaks.
Yeah, I think that's a good guideline for sure. And I do, I even have done that in some of the Vietnam stuff that I'm looking into. Like, when you start looking into, and not specifically the My Lai massacre, but because there's so many examples of things that are adjacent to that are exactly the same as that. They're just not well known, or whatever. But when you start getting into some of those descriptions, it's really bad. It's really bad. And so sometimes I just have to say, you know what? I just gotta take a break from this, because I think, in regards to that subject, I think it's important for me to know as much as I can know about it. I feel personally that it is important. And it is a topic that I'm interested in. As you know, we've talked a lot about it, but I also think and so that's where I kind of go back and forth when we're looking at some of the stuff with people harming children. That I Is it not important to know what is going on? Is it not important to know their story and to understand that this is part of our reality? And I think that it is. But then the other part of me starts thinking, well, but if I talk about this and I'm trying to bring awareness, am I actually achieving my goal? Or am I somehow, some way engaging with this content in a way that actually ends up being harmful? And I don't think we have the answer here in this conversation, but it's just something that is on my mind. And I think that it can be in some ways applicable to a lot of the subjects that we're talking about here, and that we plan on getting into in Fool Me Twice.
Well said.
Thank you. Now,
Well said.
one of the things that you had touched on is the Men in Black. that you had been interested in that. You're talking about Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Will Smith is a phenom, and he is both Men in Black, and he is the savior of the earth. If you didn't see Independence Day, so if the
Sure.
aliens do come here, we just need Will Smith. He'll save the day.
I think we've been looking for somebody like that.
We have, and I think I found him, and his name is William. Last name Smith.
Okay, so but tell us about, and a lot of people probably already know, like a lot of the stuff I don't know about, and I'm sure they have heard of this. Talk to us about, what are the real Men in Black?
I don't know what the hell the real Men in Black are, but this was John Keel in the 60s and 70s wrote heavily about the Men in Black, specifically around reportings of sightings or UFOs. Someone reports something. This is like the classic story. Someone reports a sighting in the sky, and it could be strange aircraft, UFO, or whatever the hell it is. And they report it, and within a day or two, people show up at their door, and they're dressed in all black, like you'd see Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith in Men in Black. But they kind of fit into one of two categories. Either they are very strict and very stern, and they seem like agents trying to get information from you and scare you, or they almost act like they don't know what they're doing, and they may have kind of like a rubbery look to them, almost like there's something else in the suit of a human, a la Men in Black. But that's not one case. There are hundreds of those types of cases, and someone turning around to say, do I let these people in? And they turn around and they're gone. I don't have the answer for it. I don't know what it is, but it's not just one person. It's a lot looking into that. So I don't know what the hell the phenomena is. I think it's a combination of things, but that's what I've gathered from the Men in Black stories. John Keel did, you'll have to excuse me for a minute so I can check on something upstairs, but in my home, John Keel did do a study himself of gathering the best that he could get of all of the Men in Black encounters, depictions of the Men in Black. He had them describe the eyewitnesses to Men in Black, describe the facial features and everything they could about these Men in Black. And he did come up with an answer. And now I forget the name of the people. We talked about this once before, Ashley. You know what I'm talking about? And it's I'll say a race, but it's a race of people that are Nordic, but kind of an offshoot of Nordic. And it was Renee Zellweger is like the figurehead for those types of people, that typically slightly Asiatic eyes, almost fair but kind of grayish complexion, tall and thin. I forget what else was in the description, but that was the most common scene of Men in Black. And the people of this culture, thank you for looking it up while I ramble on, they are known for their shamanistic abilities, these Nordic type people. That Renee Zellweger is not one of them, but that she's comes from that lineage, so she would be an example of what you would look for in those types of facial features. Does that make sense? I hope you're looking up the name of those people, because now I can't remember it.
Yes, I am. But go ahead and take care of what you want. It's the Sami, SAMI ancestry.
Okay. I'll be right back.
Yep, no problem. And while he does that, I'm going to pull up the, you're going to hear me clacking on my computer, so my apologies for that. But I'm going to pull up the Sami people so I can show some of the images of this interesting looking people that, like he was saying, I mean, they look almost Native American in a way, and maybe a little, what's the word? Like maybe a little Russian. I don't know. Y'all have to tell me what you think. I'll see if I can pull up some bigger images here. Nope. That didn't work. How do I get to the big image like I want? Let me see here. I'm trying to find an image of this woman who is part of this culture that he's talking about. Let me see if this will let me zoom in here. All right, so I think that's a little bit better. Okay, so these are some images of the Sami people. So you can see there looks to be like some Nordic influence, but also there is a slightly Asian or Russian type look to these people. And so I found the story about the Men in Black being mostly associated with the Sami people very fascinating. And again, this is not something that I know a ton about or anything like that, but this has come up in our conversations. So I thought that was pretty cool. And we can get back to that whenever he comes back. And in the meantime, I just wanted to go ahead and shout out the chat and everybody who stopped by today. I appreciate you joining us. So we had Sweets, Jason Barker, Spirit of the Age. Franco stopped by at least at the beginning, and we did have a weird time change. Normally I'm on at 8:30, but because of the schedule, snafu earlier, and then Sean could join me, so we did 9:30. So thanks everybody for being here. We had Little John, Levi, Cecilia, Karen Peterson, Conspiriality, Ghost Art, Dustin Helms, Nay Bones, Nostradamus, Karen Carpenter, Nature Boy, Sam, SMU Husky, Free RN. And if I missed anybody, I apologize. I try to keep track of that because I appreciate everybody tuning in. And now Sean is back, so we're going to continue our conversation. Sean, I did bring up the image of the Sami people, and you can continue if you recall where you had left off as far as the Sami people, the Men in Black.
Whew. Yeah, there's what's often described as the Asiatic eyes, the ruddy complexion, the tall, typically a little bit longer hands and feet than others. Also in these weird ass Men in Black stories, the very strange ones, which is not uncommon. Experiencers say, I mentioned that Men in Black will come to their door and they'll ask to come inside, and there's always like a strange smell, almost like a sulfuric smell. So you could think devil or demon or alien, whatever the hell you want to think. It almost seems like they're not fit for that area, and they're unaccustomed to our norms. Well, they'll be offered a glass of water and they won't know what the hell to do with it, and they'll just like put it up to their face. It's so outlandish. It's almost like the person is tripping, and maybe that's part of the phenomena itself. I don't know, but that is quite weird, and it was not uncommon in the 60s and 70s.
That is very strange indeed. But perhaps, again, something else that we can get into, because what we are going to do with our show, I know I've already said this a little bit, but we're planning on doing deep dives into some of these subjects. So we're coming up on the hour 30 mark, and so I'm not going to keep Sean too much longer. But I do want to give a little bit of a teaser, not too much, because we have a game plan for what our next episode, and okay, let me rewind. I still have to go through all the things to upload this show to the podcatcher. We are not going live with our deep dive show or with Fool Me Twice at this time. Now, we may eventually move to that or mix it up a little bit, but right now we don't. And it's because we don't have a super regular schedule. Some of this stuff takes longer to research and to put into a presentation form. And for example, the book that Sean is about to talk about, this is something that he read the book and made notes while he was doing that. And it's not like a super thin book or anything like that. Then went back over the notes, extracted those notes, put them into a notebook, and then is also putting them into a presentation. So there's a lot of work. So that's why we're not likely going live, at least at the beginning, because we don't know how often the episodes are going to be able to be released and things like that. So having said that, I need to publish our first episode, which is not exactly the same conversation, but there's a similarity to what we're talking about, just kind of introducing and touching on some things. And then for our next episode, we are going to be taking a deep dive. So Sean, without giving too much away, can you give us a little sampling of what we're talking about for episode 2?
No. Yes, of course I can. It is Nigel Davies' Human Sacrifice in History and Today. This is a deep, dark topic. It's not for everybody. I apologize. We will cover many different wide-ranging topics on Fool Me Twice, but this one I'm trying to come out with a banger about the history of human sacrifice. So don't throw us to the wind if it's not up your alley. There will be a variety of things, and we talk about that on our introduction episode. But the deep dive into human sacrifice is pretty wild. If you can tolerate it. I understand if you can't, no harm, no foul. But if you'd like a little teaser into this, I will be giving an introduction of this book, and I'll be giving a conclusion, but the bulk of it, I will be the travel agent for Ashley, and I'm going to send her around the world through time so she can personally experience some of the atrocities that have gone through history. I'm trying to make light of it. I will have lovey-dovey, rosy-posy pictures, not murder pictures. I'll be speaking the murder, so I'm trying to not make it all so damn dark, but there are patterns in the history of human sacrifice that we see today. And I'll get to it in the conclusion of my deep dive. Some of it is the author's words. Some of it's my words, because I noticed things after reading it that was like, oh shit, I need to jot this down. I'm seeing the same exact patterns in Mesopotamia 8,000 years ago that we're seeing today in all our culture. It's just a little bit twisted. So this is not something that is, what I'll say next is not something that we see today, but there is a phenomena that is on every single continent throughout history. And the Hindu word for it is sutti, Suttee would be the English version of it. It translates to, I believe, widow death. So every culture on Earth, every continent through history, practiced a form of widow death, where married couples together, obviously they're married, the husband passes away, and the wife commits suicide, not by force, willingly. And that is a big theme in this book, is that these people throughout history and human sacrifice are not like the movies where they're bogged down, they're tied down and they're tortured and they're killed. They are willing participants in it because of the ideology of the time, because of the belief at the time. It may be a little bit different in today's cult world or occult world, but the ritual aspect of the human sacrifice didn't change compared to 10,000 years ago. Even Neanderthals were doing something very similar that we're doing today that I'll get into.
Yes, that was a really good sampling of the history of human sacrifice review that we're going to be doing. And I find it very, very fascinating. And I do think that thematically it's really important, because this is a topic that has come up in today's day and time. many times, right? We saw people talking about that in some of, likely conspiracy candy, frazzle drip type conversations, right? But we also heard about these weird code, what appears to be coded language in the Epstein files, right? Is that conspiracy candy? Is any of the stuff that's in there accurate? I have no idea. But I think that we know that, at least from some of the older serial killer cases that we know about, that it's human sacrifice, at least in this modern time, like it is happening. Maybe not in the way or the basis that we may think we know that it's happening, but it is definitely happening. This is still an element that is that goes on in this world. And maybe there are some new iterations about that. Maybe we can discuss that as well. But I think that it's important for us to understand that there is historical basis for this modern day conversation. And not that we're going to have all the answers or solve everything from looking into this, what this author is presenting and what we're talking about, but it starts to help provide the building blocks for understanding that particular theme. And it is a dark theme in some cases, but in some cases, what we're going to be talking about is actually, I mean, it's not great, but like you said, it's different when there's a cultural element of that and people voluntarily do that in order to the sacrifice for the benefit of the people. I hate to say things like for the greater good, but that is that's the line of thinking as far as that goes.
Absolutely. And that's a big theme throughout history, is the scapegoating, the community scapegoating. This may get a little touchy to some people, but you can think of Christianity as being an example of Jesus Christ being the scapegoat who died for the sins. Well, that theme did portray in many other cultures. They did it on a different scale, where they were picking someone from their own group or their own tribe to wash away the sins of their tribe. They would mutilate someone while they're alive. And this was done by the Celts. This was done by the Japanese. This was done by the Fijians. This is done by people in New Zealand. This was done by the Hawaiians. This was done by the Iroquois. This was done by the Incas. Scapegoating was very prevalent and worldwide. And a lot of this hasn't ended in some parts of the world. Some of it has with modernization. And that's where we'll kind of get into, well, how is it portrayed today? Is war an example of mass suicide? Are you offering your own suicide as the scapegoat for your
I think
country?
that
It's pretty dark. It's pretty dark, but
it is pretty dark.
we got to talk about it. I'm taking one for the team. I just talked about how don't dive too deeply into these topics because you'll get attached and it's so bad for you. And here I am. I'm taking one for the team for everybody, so you can learn something new.
Well, I think it's important. And that's the line, right? Of going too far or taking it too far for yourself versus trying to have an understanding in a crazy environment where it's difficult to know what is truth. So if you want to understand what you perceive or what we perceive to be human sacrifice in today's day and time, then we need to understand the historical basis for what that looked like through various cultures, because it is different. Like what you were saying, some people, it is a self-sacrifice. It is so that they can be with their spouse. Some people, it is for the greater good. Some people, it is, they were sacrificed by another tribe because they were considered an enemy. In some cases it is done for that reason. And there's a very famous story in modern times of, I can't remember. It was the ranch in Mexico, and it was like a student who had gone he crossed the border, he and his friends. I don't know if it was in Tijuana or something like that, but there was a cult. They're practicing black magic, Santeria.
The Matamoros cult? Is that what you're talking about?
Maybe the kid went missing. He was like one of the universities in Texas.
Yeah, the Matamoros cult, the cult of the dead or something. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that wasn't that long ago that happened, and they literally,
They like boiled him alive,
yes,
something like that,
and they
because
thought
his
that they
remains were found in a clay pot.
yes, and they thought that they wanted somebody intelligent. They wanted the brain because they thought it would bring them intelligence. And the people that ended up getting into a shootout with police, they believed that they were invisible. So we're not getting into where they were at mentally, but all of that to say, like, that wasn't that long ago. That literally happened. People believe that they did a sacrifice of this guy. It doesn't fit the profile of what we've been talking about as far as voluntary or for the greater good or whatever, but that's the other thing. There's a lot of nuance in that subject.
True.
So thank you for that sampling. So yeah, I'm going to let everybody know whenever we have not recorded that episode yet. So once we do, I'm going to let everybody know. I hope that you will go check it out, listen, let us know your feedback. What do you think? Sean, I know that we are kind of getting low on time. I have a couple notes really quick.
Yeah, go for it. I got the time for you.
Okay. So I wanted to shout out Doc Rock. He is our friend from we met in Autonomy, and that's where Sean and I met as well. And I dropped a link for Doc's Discord, which is pinned in the chat in my channel. And the movie that he's showing on Saturday is the Andromeda Strain, which is the 70s version. And that is due to the current narratives that we are seeing right now around certain viruses and illnesses. So the Andromeda Strain. And if you want to join in on Doc's show or on his movie presentation, that's Saturday night. And he puts the link for that Zoom link in his Discord, which is pinned in my chat. And of course, you can always let me know if you have any questions surrounding that. And then I also want to say hello to Topographia in the chat and Hiker Emoji. So thanks to everybody for joining us. And I shouted out the other part of the chat earlier. So thank you everybody so much. Now, last thing I wanted to ask you about. So
this won't be the last thing. Don't lie. Come on. That's okay.
Okay.
We can end or I got time. So lay it on me.
Okay. Spirit of the Age said, how far have you delved into alternate science? And I said, any specific genre? He said, such as the atomic model in modern science is impossible. How can a negative electron orbit a positive proton without collapsing? Have you looked into alternate models? Oh, he said it's nerdy and complex and never mind. But I'm sorry, I already asked. And Sean is a huge nerd, so it's no problem. Thoughts on that, Sean?
I don't know how the hell it works, but it works because scientists tell us it works. So believe trust the science. I am the science. No,
you kind of are the science.
Stop it. I have looked into it a little bit. I just don't have the answer for it. I don't know how the fuck it's working, to be honest. I don't know how most of the world is working, but it's a good point. If we're told something by people that call themselves scientific experts and it's moved from scientific theory to fact to law, just because it's scientific law doesn't mean it shouldn't be questioned. And that's supposed to be the most solid thing out there. Scientific laws. It's the law. I still don't buy into all of it because I don't even believe viruses are real. I'm one of those weirdos. Bioweapons, bacteria, sure, but viruses just don't fit the bill to me.
Yeah, it's a hot topic in the conspiracy space for sure. And we can delve into that more because I find it to be an interesting conversation. And I think there's a lot of things that we could, look into as far as making points one way or the other. But I do think that it's interesting from your perspective of somebody who is a scientist who is working in a lab that you are still questioning certain things that we're told as the law. And then I also just want to make the distinction about what is considered like the basis for scientific work and then theory, that it's still called germ theory. I'm not saying that germs do not exist, but I'm just saying that these are distinctions that maybe they're important, maybe they're not. I don't know. Germ theory, virus theory, terrain theory, they're called theory.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I've been wrong once before, as Ashley knows, once and only once.
I
I've
was
been
wrong once
many
before.
times. And hey, I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong because I've been wrong many, 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 many times. So teach me. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, and just to say, like what we have talked about so many times in this episode is I don't know. It is okay for us to say, I don't know. This is what I think. This is why I think it. But ultimately, I know that I could be wrong about this, and I'm willing to adjust my perspective based on that, which is why my handle from the very beginning of this whole thing has been Think, Change, Repeat, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to think about something from a different perspective and be open to having my paradigm shifted. And I try to continue to be that way. I'm sure that I'm not always great at it, but I do try. And I try to not hold on too tightly to a lot of this stuff because there's so much that we simply do not know. We have no idea. And we can speculate and we can try to learn history and put these things together, but that's the best we can do.
Very true. It's an electric world. There's your alternate science. It is electric.
Okay, there you go. And maybe we'll get into that at some point too. There's so many things that we want to cover. And I think that we have covered a lot of interesting stuff. And I know this is like a free form conversation that didn't have any specific deep dive, but I hope that if you've joined us to listen to the show, I hope that you enjoyed it and got some interesting things to talk about or interesting book references or whatever. And hopefully you enjoyed this conversation with Sean and that you'll check us out whenever we are publishing Fool Me Twice. So, the other thing that I wanted to let people know is that if you do want to reach out to us, we do have an email, which is foolmetwicepodcast@gmail.com. So, you can always, email us if you have something of interest or any questions or anything like that. And if Sean is willing, maybe he can come back on and, you know, Spirit, we had talked about you coming on at one point. So if you want to talk about alternate science at some point, we can make that happen. I'll just facilitate because I don't know any of that stuff, but I'm interested in being there for the combo. So having said that, again, thank you everybody who is listening, who joined us live, who's hanging in the chat. It's great to see you. And then if you're listening after the fact, thank you as well. I really appreciate that. And I have to drop the obligatory, don't forget, like, subscribe, and share, and hit that notification bell so you can join us live or, whatever. Sean, thank you for joining me. I know it was last minute, but I have really enjoyed the conversation. And I think the people in the chat have enjoyed it as well. I've got some really interesting questions and feedback, and that's been a lot of fun. What do you think?
Thank you. I was terribly nervous showing up for a live show last minute, but thank you for popping my cherry. Look at you.
Don't. Nope.
This was very exciting. You triggered my complexity. You got me on my toes, but it was very good. Now I'm cool, calm, relaxed. I really hope people don't think I'm just some schlep from New Jersey, and I hope they continue to listen to you and to check out Fool Me Twice, because we've got so much cool stuff planned. We're both working on multiple presentations and multiple discussion topics at a time, and we're going deeper than you've been before. No jokes there.
No jokes, please. Yeah. So again, thanks. Karen Peterson had noted, dang, it's been 2 hours. And Spirit said 2 hours flew by. And I agree. This has been so much fun to have you all here. And this time absolutely has flown by. So I really appreciate it. Don't go anywhere, Sean. I'm going to talk to you after the show. And everybody, I think I've called out everything that I wanted to. Nights of the Storm live Saturday, 2 p.m. We got Fool Me Twice coming up. I'm planning to get back to my regular schedule next Thursday at 8:30 p.m. You can email me at Think.Change.Repeat@gmail if you want to, or you can email Sean and I at foolmetwicepodcast@gmail. And I think I've covered it. I've been rambling. My apologies. I hope you all have an amazing evening. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.